This is episode 2 of Short but Sweet Anime. This episode will be 3 times 3 eyes. The story kicks off with a 3-eyed immortal trying to become mortal. Her name is Pi. She manages to track down a young man named Yakumo. He is basically destined to help her to become mortal, or human as she calls it. And after a few minutes of meeting, he manages to get himself killed. But that's okay, because she has mystical powers that will drain his soul and then make his body completely invulnerable, or immortal, just like her. Only he is a servant and she is a master. And now for him to be freed, he must make her mortal. In order to become mortal, both of them need to touch this statue, which is supposed to be called the Statue of Humanity, but it looks like a bunch of demons and creeps me the fuck out. Like most protagonists, Pi has 2 personalities. One, an innocent young girl who's really excited to become human, and the other is a deranged psychopath that likes to kill things. She carries around with her a staff. This staff contains a demon in it, which she calls her best friend. This demon is actually what kills Yakumo the first time. And what does she do after that? Obviously, she does what we would all do in that situation. Awaken our alternate personalities and use our mystical powers to suck someone's soul and then turn them into a slave. Now Pi is over 300 years old, which I don't quite understand why she hasn't gained any maturity in this character. Her alternate personality is obviously very mature, but she is not. She's like a hyperactive 3-year-old. Annoying, but actually a kind of a likable character. She also gains a lot of characterization through the middle of the anime. So if you don't like her first of all, you'll like her later on. Like certain kind of vegetables or BDSM. You just have to grow into it. Yakumo is a normal guy. That is the best way to describe. He's just a normal guy. He has no money, he works in an embarrassing and degrading job, and nothing ever seems to go right for him. He's the kind of character that anybody and everybody can relate to. So quite frankly, I believe that becoming immortal was probably the best thing for him, mainly because he's always getting killed. He bears the mark of Wu upon his forehead, which is an indicator of his immortality or invulnerability. He is always trying to hide this mark generally, but it generally comes out whenever he gets injured or killed. Despite being a Wu or an invulnerable immortal, he is quite weak. He's really just a human but with immortality. Arms still get ripped off, heads go missing, and he still feels pain. So really, he doesn't have the best kind of version of immortality. But don't get me wrong, I still want to be immortal, I just don't really want that type of immortality. Good and bad points of this anime are very hard to discern. On one hand, there aren't a lot of episodes, but on the other hand, they're very quite long. The animation isn't very good, but the story is. The characters' dubbing doesn't quite sync up, but the voice actors are very quite talented. This is one of those animes that kind of sits on the cusp of awesome to bad. You really can't tell, but I believe it's closer to the awesome than the bad. The only bad thing I could really think of was the fact that it's still not long enough. It needs to be more episodes, and I want to see Masako getting more brutalized and killed. That's a fun part of the show. And I reckon the enemies need a little bit more screen time and needs a little bit more explanation on a few things, but other than that, awesome anime. Overall, despite a rocky beginning and some poor choices during the storyline, I found this anime very enjoyable. Good characters, good storyline, awesome villains and enemies, with the exception of a few. I give it a 7 out of 10 missing limbs.
I have studied Machiavelli, Aristotle, Gabe and Plato, yet you still equate my intellect to that of a potato. This place would fall apart without my ever watchful eye. They might tell you I'm a half-wit, it's a great big bloody lie. So don't call me a moron, I'm super astute. There is no conundrum that my core cannot compute. No, don't call me a moron, you fostered balloon. My IQ's the infinite space from here to the moon. My IQ's the infinite space from here to the moon.